Hello, and welcome in to another edition of the Tech in 10 postgame show from the Ruston Daily Leader. I'm sports reporter Matt Belinson, coming to you from Joe Stadium for the final time this season. After Louisiana Tech's 37-27 loss to the UAB Blazers, the Bulldogs officially end the 2022 season 3-9 overall, 2-6 in Conference USA. I'm just going to preface by saying I'm not going to touch on tonight's result a whole lot. I think if you watch this game, either on TV, there weren't a whole lot of fans in the stands, so I guess you probably were watching this on TV if you were watching. It was pretty much the same as all other Louisiana Tech losses have gone this year. They couldn't stop the run. Dwayne McBride is a Doak Walker semifinalist for a reason. For UAB, Louisiana Tech could not tackle whatsoever tonight. And couldn't fill their gaps. And he, if he wasn't taken out earlier, he would have finished, well above 300 yards rushing. But UAB took care of it, in a lot of other aspects. Over on the flip side, you make a quarterback change. Bring in Jack Turner off the bench, in the second quarter, and Landry Liddy, had some struggles, with the offense, weren't able to score, like they wanted, and move down the field like they wanted to threaten UAB. I thought Jack and Liddy, they both played okay. Again, it's at this point of the year, I don't think tonight's result and their play tonight was really the end-all be-all for this team. Obviously, you would have liked to end the year with a win for these 14 seniors on senior night, but I think big picture-wise, you weren't close to a bowl, eligibility or Conference USA title. So, in the end, I don't think winning or losing tonight, matters that much. Which is why I'm going to hit you with two prevailing thoughts as we go into the offseason. If you listen to Sonny Cumbie's postgame and his players, it's pretty clear that this team wants to move into the offseason pretty quickly and on to next year. And I think if you're a Tech fan, from what I've been reading on social media, it sounds like that switch was flipped a couple of months ago. So I'm going to hit you with two prevailing thoughts here as we close out the 2022 season for Louisiana Tech. I think number one, I think there has to be a better sense of accountability within this roster. And Sonny Cumbie mentioned it, obviously after last week's loss to Charlotte, that there are players on this team that are not taking responsibility for what it takes to win. I think a lot of times, just as regular college football fans, we might look at things and say, okay, well, you're more talented, so you just show up on Saturday and you win. You should be fine. That's not how it works. You got to win Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in all aspects, not just on the practice field, to build a winning environment. He said that, Sonny Cumbie, he said, this team has to show up on time. It's got to go to the weight room. It's got to watch film. There's so many things that this group is still lacking, 12 games in to a new coaching staff, that I feel like is pretty alarming to hear, that there wasn't a sense of accountability top to bottom. Obviously guys like Joshua Moat, Trey Harris, Parker McNeil, those players, held the standard for this team this year in terms of accountability. Unfortunately for Louisiana Tech, you won 3 games, so it's pretty clear that you have a roster overall, that was built with players that weren't, ready to buy in, weren't ready for the change. And I think if you're Sonny Cumbie, he said as much in his postgame presser, they have to go into this offseason pretty quickly and look at who is on this roster that will come into this offseason and want to work. I think a lot of guys say, oh yeah, we're here to work. We're here to, work hard. It's going to take hard work to fix this. Well, it's pretty clear that, that message was either relayed and players didn't care, or the coaches didn't do a good enough job, getting guys motivated to get to that point. And so I think those are two areas of concern if you're a Louisiana Tech fan, that, you knew this year, going into this season, that there were probably going to be some growing pains. That being said, I don't think anyone predicted a 3-9 season out of this, and that shows me that there are some real issues within that locker room overall in terms of holding guys to a standard, holding guys to a winning culture, which I think if you're a Louisiana Tech fan, that's concerning. But Sonny Cumbie, said as much, that this has to start fast. They got to get guys in and out, coaches possibly in and out, to turn this thing around, which kind of leads into my next point. I feel like there's a real sense of urgency within this building. I think if you came to me before the season began and said, Matt, Louisiana Tech is going to miss a bowl game and they're going to not contend for the Conference USA Championship, I think I would have been like, yeah, that sounds about right. This team won 3 games last year for a reason. The roster deficiencies were there. Those roster deficiencies showed a lot this season. So I don't think that, on those surface level things, I don't think this season is that alarming. That being said, I'm going to read you, this historical note here of just where the program is at this point. Obviously, the Bulldogs won 3 games last season. That's what got Skip Holtz fired. And then first year of Sonny Cumbie's, tenure, the Bulldogs go 3-9. This is the first time since the 1993-94 seasons that this program has had consecutive seasons with less than 4 wins. I think if you're a Bulldog fan, that's a good and a bad thing there. On the good side, you can go to your players and you can go into the offseason saying, okay, well, this program has a history of responding and developing guys and, contending pretty quickly. And I think if you're Sonny Cumbie, that's a good thing. You weren't here, obviously, for those wins. But you can go to this your roster and say, hey, guys, there's a lot of change coming to this conference next year. And if we just put, some accountability in place and we can get the right guys into the system and we can put players in position to win, we can contend. We've shown that we can be a consistent winner in this conference. And there are players on this team that were part of that winning. And I think if you're Sonny Cumbie, you got to go to the guys and say, this can be fixed quickly if players truly want to get to that level, if coaches want to get to that level, if the two can come together and buy into each other. It can be fixed. On the flip side, again, what did I just read? It's the first time since the early 90s that this has taken place. Louisiana Tech is at a crossroads right now. And what did I just mention? There's a lot of exodus going to take place in Conference USA. A lot of teams heading to either the American Athletic Conference or the Sun Belt that were at the top of this conference for years. And if you're Louisiana Tech, there has to be a sense of urgency. Obviously it's hard to think, after a 3-win season, but you could contend. You could be in the mix next year in this conference. It's losing a lot of its firepower. And if you're Louisiana Tech, you could just lean back on that history and say, hey, we've shown that we can be at this level. And I think that's where the sense of urgency comes from Sonny Cumbie and his players. After the game, someone asked him, it's pretty early, I know, Coach, but, do you have an early season evaluation of yourself? End of season evaluation, I should say. And Sonny Cumbie talked about obviously changing, possibly practice structure and, how to, block better and things like that. But one of the first things he said was, we got to make this roster better in a hurry. The transfer portal is a dangerous game. Players that you think are going to be part of this program for years to come for Louisiana Tech, they could be hitting the road. And guys that you want out of this program, you're going to have to send into the transfer portal. And then you're going to have to go find guys in the transfer portal to bring in here. And I think that's where the sense of urgency comes from this program. Sonny Cumbie realizes that, obviously, I think he had a pass for the most part from this fan base this year of, okay, you know what, probably not going to win a lot. Just get through the year, figure out what you have, develop a culture, develop a system, and then next year, now let's start winning some games. I think he realizes that they've got to get a lot done if they're going to go into next year and win the games that they want to. And so I think that's where the sense of urgency comes from. If you got to go into the transfer portal and you got to hit the offseason work immediately. Maybe not this coming Monday, but within the next couple of weeks, like before Christmas break, you got to start making those calls right away, because other teams are and other teams will. And I think if you're Louisiana Tech, you can't afford to fall behind, especially with all the change taking place in the conference going forward, and with a new coaching staff. Still, you can't afford to have another season of just middling middle of the road, record and losses that shouldn't have been there. You can't afford that if you're Sonny Cumbie. We've seen a lot this year where coaches you think aren't on the hot seat, they end up getting fired. And I think if you're Sonny Cumbie and this coaching staff, you're obviously not at that point yet. I should be very clear, you're not even close to that point. But that's why going into next year, you got to make sure that the work starts right now. You got to make sure you get guys in this building that are holding themselves accountable and want to listen to the coaching it takes to win, because there are opportunities available. If this team wants it, there are opportunities available to win starting next year. Again, I know it's hard to think after a 3-9 record, but there are opportunities available for this team if everything comes together. Again, everything is a pretty broad word. There's lots that needs to be fixed. Roster management, coaching, scheme. There's going to be more change, and there's probably going to be more growing pains to start next season, if I had to guess. But you hope that you can build off this year, build the young assets that you have, and then turn it into some more wins next year and give yourself an opportunity to go bowling. Hopefully give yourself an opportunity to be in the upper half of this conference. And so that's the mission for Louisiana Tech. I'm not going to go too much further here. Again, if you were a Louisiana Tech fan, you watched this year. It was a disappointing, finish. 3-9 record. Again, it was the first year of a head coach, and his culture in a building. I thought that there were some positives. I thought Jarvis Norton, Marquise Crosby, in the run game, Landry Liddy, I thought showed you some signs as a young quarterback. Trey Harris, really Cyrus Allen, on the outside. There are some pieces here that if you develop them into next season, who knows where you end up. So, again, I think number one, it starts with accountability, and then number two, that accountability has to turn, itself around pretty quickly for this program. So, that's going to do it for this final edition of the Tech in 10 post-game show. I appreciate everyone for following along this season. I'm so looking forward to another season covering Louisiana Tech. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing how this program can turn itself around. So thank you for listening to these recaps this year. Hope you enjoy this one, and I will see y'all again. Thank you for listening.